Well, with Revelations complete and characters out of the way, the next step is to talk about the best chapters in Revelations and then move on to the worst. Only this time there isn't going to be a worst chapters list. The reason why, you ask? It's simple. I love, or at the very least enjoy, every single chapter in Revelations. I mean, yeah, not all of them are amazing, but at the very least all of them are good. And even though a decent chunk of the chapters are just recycled from Birthright and Conquest, at least they're the good chapters, not the bad ones. And the original chapters in Revelations are just so awesome. So it seems like it's going to be just a best list this time, since I really have nothing bad to say about the Revelation chapters as a whole. Just a few things to clear up before we begin. 1, this is just my opinion, and I'm simply ranking these chapters on how much I enjoyed them, so don't be surprised if a chapter you either love or hate is or isn't on here. 2, this time I will be including the first 6 chapters of the game, since I have yet to talk about them and I feel now's the time to do so if they just so happen to make the cut. 3, in terms of difficulty, just like with Birthright and Conquest, I played on hard mode classic. And finally, no parallel chapters since they're going to get their own list at some point. And of course there's going to be spoilers for Revelations. Oh, and I won't be talking about the recycled chapters from Birthright and Conquest since I've technically already talked about them. And with all that cleared up, it's time to end this war and find a way to unite both nations together by tackling the chapters in Revelations. It may not have been the easiest thing to do, but hot damn was it just so awesome. Throughout Fire Emblem Fates, a mysterious figure was constantly attacking Corrin and Azura. In Revelations, we find out who this mysterious person is, none other than Azura's mother, Aerith, or however you pronounce it, and after fighting her once already, the second time round shall be a battle that stays forever in my memories. How ironic. The name of this chapter is called Memories, yet Aerith, being Anankos' puppet, has none. Shouldn't this chapter have been called Amnesia instead? Well, bringing the chapter's name into question matters not, since what matters is that Chapter 22 Memories is a damn fun chapter in of itself. It wasn't too spectacular or outstanding, but it was a fun time nonetheless, and sometimes that's all I ask for. In Chapter 22, the objective is to defeat Aerith and seize the map, which is simple enough, but the real challenge comes from trying to reach her. This is due to the map's layout and overall design, since the majority of the map is filled with thick bushes that can only be passed by either using the dragon bases to burn down sections of them at a time, or use flying units to fly across them. With this in mind, the chapter allows you to tackle it whichever way you see fit, allowing you to either take your time or rush straight to the boss, but no matter how you decide to play, be sure to be ready for the enemies that come for you, as they are varied and powerful. I really like how this map can be tackled in various ways while still being challenging, but also fair at the same time. Not to mention, I feel the dragon veins are well incorporated into this map, as they can benefit you if used correctly, but also hurt you if used incorrectly. Plus there are treasure chests in this map, which is always good, and the map is just a fun time from beginning to end. I've said it many times before, sometimes you don't have to be the best at something to be great, you just have to be good in all areas and have your own uniqueness to you. And well, Chapter 22 is once again a prime example of this, since the chapter, while not amazing, does everything well and has its own charm to stand on its own and deliver quite a fun and enjoyable experience that will forever be preserved in my memories. Tell me if this sounds familiar. The mother of the main character dies early on in the story. Later down the line, the mother comes back from the dead, only now she is out to kill the main character, and only at the end does she regain her memories of her past life. Yes everyone, you guessed correctly. It's Chapter 24 of Revelations. You know Mikoto, you dying because you're an anime mother is one thing, but now you just so happen to have the exact same story arc as Trisha Elric from the original Fullmetal Alchemist. I swear, if Fire Emblem gets any more anime, we're going to have a J-pop style crossover game and god damn it, they beat me to the punch. Anyway, coming in at number 9 we have Chapter 24, Days Lost, a chapter that is a lot more strategic than most chapters and requires a good amount of thinking, not to mention having the ultimate dick move that actually makes sense upon reflection. In Chapter 24, Corrin and the gang are on their way to fight Anankos. But suddenly everything goes dark, and Corrin then sees the spirit of Queen Mikoto, who warned you about the upcoming maze and how to avoid defeat. The main gimmick behind this chapter is that it plays out like a stealth mission, since there are enemies in this map that will summon reinforcements if you are detected or kill them. Adding to that is that there are blue and red doors that will either lead to the next section or cause you to take serious damage and have you face a large amount of enemies depending on which door you choose. Just like with chapter 22, I like how this chapter gives you the choice of how to play, since you can go all Metal Gear and get through this chapter without being detected, or you can go all balls to the wall and take on the reinforcements in order to get those delicious experience points. Either way you decide to play will be a challenging feat, as you need to make sure you stay out of the enemy's line of sight and pick the right door for the stealth style, and you have to be prepared to face a large amount of tough enemies if you decide to screw stealth and go straight Dynasty Warriors up in this bitch. The entire focus of this chapter is very unique and really offers up something new and original, even for a game as varied as Fire Emblem Fates in terms of level design. And yes, while the game pulls a massive dick move at the end that most players fall for, it actually makes sense given the context, so you can't really blame the game for doing this. Well, Queen Makoto, even though your role in Fate's story is not very original considering it's been done before in other anime, at the very least the chapter you're in makes up for this, as it is one of the most unique chapters in any Fire Emblem game and really offers up something new while at the same time being very challenging and a very standout experience. Now we just need to find a way to bring you back to life. I knew I should have played on casual mode, you would have been back to us in no time. So the deadline is approaching. Soon the skies above Nohr and Hoshido will change colour and we have to get both sides to join forces. But before that, we've got business to attend to. And this time, I'm not waiting till the end of the game to kick Hans' ass. For time is of the essence and your time has run out. Taking down Hans, whether it be Birthright, Conquest or Revelations, always puts a smile on my face. Even if doing it in Conquest sucks, but nevertheless killing him is always satisfying, so needless to say, getting to kill him this early on is all the more sweeter. Indeed, coming in at number 8 we have chapter 16, White Flames, a chapter that aside from letting us kill Hans early on, is one of the most unique Fire Emblem chapters I've played and really uses the Dragon Veins to add an extra layer of depth to this chapter. In chapter 16, Corrin is nearing the point where the skies between Nohr and Hoshido will change colour, and Corrin hopes to convince both sides to join the cause. But before that we must save Riona from Hans and his crew, which honestly isn't needed since Riona is a fucking awesome sword master and Hans isn't exactly a difficult boss all things considered. The objective of this map is to defeat Hans, but in order to do so you must go through his army and make your way around the walls of fire blocking your path. Yes, if it wasn't obvious by now, the walls of fire are the main gimmick of this chapter, as they will block your path and every so often certain walls will disappear and then reappear. Because of this, you have to stay on your toes and not get too ahead of yourself in order to ensure that the enemy doesn't get a surprise attack on you and that your path of retreat isn't cut off. However, if you use the Dragon Veins scattered around the map, you can raise or lower certain walls of fire whenever you feel like, which adds an extra layer of strategy to this level. Aside from that, the chapter is still very challenging with a lot of varied enemies, and the overall layout allows you to progress through the chapter how you see fit for the most part. And though the firewalls can catch you off guard if you're not prepared, I find them to be a unique concept that can both work as a blessing and a curse depending on how you play. In the end, chapter 16 was a very cool chapter that offered up a unique experience and was an overall fun and challenging time, as well as being one of the best examples of how Dragon Veins can be used to benefit a chapter, not hinder it. Man, I wish every chapter in Fates were like that. So after all these years locked up in Nohr, it's finally time to head out into the big wide world and see what it has to offer. But wouldn't you know it, as soon as we step out the front door, the journey literally begins. I must say, Fates, when it comes to getting players accustomed to what's to be expected in the future, this chapter certainly did an A+ job, since for number 7 on this list we have chapter 3, Journey Begins, a chapter that really prepares you for the rest of Fates regardless of the pathway you pick, and also manages to be one of the more fun, strategic, and even challenging chapters in the game. In chapter 3, Corrin has been sent to investigate a so-called abandoned fortress, but as soon as Corrin arrives, he or she runs into Hoshido's soldiers, and thus a battle ensues. Now the objective of this chapter is to seize the fort, which doesn't sound too bad, but be forewarned people, though this chapter isn't too hard, it is certainly not easy, and playing recklessly is a one-way ticket to the bottomless canyon, which is something Gunther learned firsthand. Due to your lack of units and the enemy numbers, this chapter can be quite the struggle to deal with, as the enemy are decently leveled and there's a good variety of them. Because of this, you really have to plan ahead and be sure that you're not going to lose the fight, as well as use each of your allies to the best of their abilities. Now, while this chapter may seem daunting considering how early on it is in the game, I find it to be a great way to get players accustomed to what's to come from each pathway, since it will train you to the point where you should be able to deal with Birthright and Revelations without too much hassle, as well as prepare you for the hardship that is Conquest. So while it might be frustrating for the first time player, it will prepare you for what's to come and really help you out in the long run. And if you're already an experienced player, you can use this chapter to gather up many early game experience points for Corin or anyone else by fighting the enemies at the top of the map. Each pathway in Fire Emblem Fates is drastically different, and the purpose of the first 6 chapters is to get players accustomed to what every pathway is going to be like, and I feel Chapter 3 does this better than any of the others, as it is a very challenging chapter that will prepare you for Birthright, Conquest and Revelations. While it may seem frustrating at first, it's all necessary to help you for the rest of the journey to come. So in essence it's kind of like what Radiant Dawn did, only you know, Fate's done it right. Well, now that I've got Ryoma and Xander on my side, courtesy of the most epic handshake in a Fire Emblem game, it's time for us to head to Valor and discover who the true evil behind Fire Emblem Fates is. So join me everyone as together we ride into the Veiled Kingdom. Wow, that certainly was a fun ride down the Bottomless Canyon. I should do that more often. But no time to waste now, as coming in at number 6 we have Chapter 18, The Veiled Kingdom, a chapter that helped to set the overall tone of the rest of the journey and is a rather unique and damn cool chapter in its own right. I must say, so far Valor's making one hell of a first impression. In Chapter 18, Corin and the gang have made their way to the Kingdom of Valor in order to defeat the true evil, but on the way down Scarlet is killed by a mysterious figure, and as soon as they land they are confronted by the armies of Valor. Go figure we'd have the devil's own luck. Once again I blame Takumi for this. The objective of this chapter is to defeat the boss, but the way you do is the real meat of the chapter, as you must activate the 8 dragon veins scattered across the map in order to gain access to the boss's lair, kind of like the Triforce hunting in Wind Waker, only far less tedious and far less bullshit. Right from the start you have the option of warping to various points on the map in order to fight the enemies and then activate the dragon veins, so this chapter allows you to play either offensively or defensively depending on your preference. Now this map has a lot of enemies of different classes scattered around it, so be sure to be careful when you send your units to different sections of the level, but as long as you play your cards right and aren't too reckless, you should be just fine. What I like most about this chapter is that it's much more objective based and feels like a proper mission rather than just a skirmish, since I like the idea of using the dragon veins to progress through the level and fighting the enemies in order to reach said dragon veins, resulting in a unique level that doesn't stray too far from the traditional Fire Emblem formula. I also like how the level incorporates the warp tiles and how it fits in with the overall structure and disjointed feel of Valor, helping to ease the player into what the rest of the game is going to be like. Going to Valor was a brand new experience compared to the rest of Fates, and well, Chapter 18 really helped add to the experience, since its more mission based design and structure helped the chapter to stand out and establish the type of levels that Valor would have to offer in the future. Epic foreshadowing at its finest. So let me get this straight. In this chapter both Nohr and Hoshido are engaged in battle, and it's up to me to stop them and defeat the true enemy. We already did this in Chapter 6 of the game and now we're doing the same thing again? Man, I know Revelations like to recycle chapters, but this is getting silly. You just better hope that this chapter is good. 1 hour later. Okay, I take back everything I said. This chapter was awesome. Man, you'd think doing the exact same thing you've done from the beginning of the game, only with a new coat of paint and a few bells and whistles, would be a recipe for disaster, not success. Then again, this is Nintendo we're talking about, and they're the masters of this sort of thing. And Chapter 13 of Revelations proves this, as it is pretty much Chapter 6 all over again, just with a few new bells and whistles, yet somehow it manages to be an overall great time. I swear Nintendo have this thing down to a science at this point. In Chapter 13, Corin and the gang are making their way to Nestra, where they are informed by Keaton and Caden that Nohr and Hoshido are at each other's throats once again, as it is the armies of Valor that are causing the chaos, but both sides are quick to point fingers at each other. The objective of this chapter is to defeat the boss at the top of the map. However, you may have noticed that both Nohr and Hoshido are making a beeline for you, so depending on how you play, you can either go straight for the boss and get it over with, or simply wait it out and battle both sides in order to get the dropped items and the experience points. I like how this chapter caters to both playstyles and offers a good challenge either way, and because of the situation taking place, the enemy variety in this map is off the charts. Seriously, you fight against so many different enemies in this map, you really have to bring a very team with you and know who to use and when to use them at the right time. This map's level design also encourages you to spread out your units because of its structure, and I find that this chapter more than most really emphasizes the use of support units rather than just brute force or stoic defenses. While the situation taking place may seem like a case of deja vu, it's actually a good thing in this case since having to fight against Nohr, Hoshido and Valor ended up being a great time, with a chapter that allowed any type of player to progress the way they want, while still being challenging, engaging and just so much fun. Leave it to Nintendo to recycle something and make it fun once again. Now how about you use some of that magic on F-Zero and make a new F-Zero game in HD? You did it with Star Fox, now do it for F-Zero, damn it! Sometimes even some of the worst case scenarios and situations can have their own silver lining. I mean, I know you lost your dad and all Ike, but look on the bright side. You got the sword rack now? Fates has another one of these examples since even though you were betrayed and played as a fool, Corin, putting everyone's lives at risk despite the many warnings you got, which shows just how naive you really are, at least this chapter was a lot of fun. It's amazing how willing people are to simply forgive and forget all that's happened in the past. I mean, Kaze forgave you even though you beat the shit out of him and sided with Nohr, and in this case, even though you made such an obvious mistake that everyone, even Takumi, warned you about, so this time you can't blame Takumi, all is forgiven because gosh darn it was chapter 21 such a damn fun chapter that made me forget all that had happened before. I guess that's the reason this chapter is called Going Forward. In chapter 21, Corin has been led into a trap by Anthony despite being warned by pretty much everyone not to. You see, Corin, this is why we can't have nice things. Soon afterwards, Anthony turns into a faceless, it happens, and now the gang must fight their way out. The objective of this chapter is to defeat the faceless Anthony, who is located at the very end of this grid-like map, covered in red and blue tiles, so you'd think you simply rush towards him, right? Well, those coloured tiles aren't simply for decoration, you see. The purpose of the coloured tiles is that they affect your unit stats depending on their class level. For instance, blue tiles will lower advanced units into unpromoted units, and red tiles will raise unpromoted units into advanced units. With this in mind, you must be very mindful of who you send to fight the enemies, as the tiles can either benefit or hinder you depending on the course of action you take. As such, this chapter really encourages careful planning and being mindful of your surroundings. This adds the real challenge factor to this chapter, along with a huge amount of enemy variety, but even with that, the layout of the map allows you enough space to tackle this chapter how you see fit, and because the enemies are spread out all over the map, you don't have to worry about being dogpiled by 10 enemies at once, which gives inexperienced players less to worry about, while still being a challenging time for experts. Also, this map has treasure chests, which is always good. Even some of the worst case scenarios can have their upsides. I mean, I know your dad tried to kill you in Ulzafil, but hey, in the end you became one of the best Fire Emblem villains because of it. And in this case, though we were led into a trap, it's a trap worth falling into, since this chapter was a lot of fun, with an interesting gimmick and being very open-ended, while at the same time being challenging but fair to all players. But I feel that because of this we should no longer trust Corin. I mean, come on, can you really trust someone who falls for such an obvious stunt, or is too quick to trust everyone, or is as stale as a loaf of bread? I certainly can't. You know, I was rather worried for Revelations early on, since 2 chapters in a row were recycled from Birthright and Conquest. Granted, I liked those chapters, but still I hope that most of the game wasn't like this. Thankfully, my prayers were answered as the next chapter was an original chapter and easily one of the best in the game, and to me, it was like hearing the voice of a god. You know something, Fates? Even though there are many things I like and don't like about you, I will admit here and now that you have some of the most unique and creative levels in any Fire Emblem game, and Chapter 10, The Voice of a God, is one of the best examples of that statement, since I don't think I've played any level in Fire Emblem as unique as this one, even by Fate standards. which, taking into consideration some of the best chapters in Birthright and Conquest, that's certainly saying a lot. In Chapter 10, Corrin and the gang make their way to Izumo, and yeah, you all know where this is going. They run into Aizana, who turns out to be Zola, and now you must defeat him and rescue Mr. I have the best hair 6 times running. Well, you know what they say? L'Oreal, because you're worth it. Now this chapter is quite the oddball since the entire thing is covered in ice, and in order to progress you must break through the ice and reach the end. Now you can tackle this chapter in many ways, and it's one of the reasons I love this chapter, since you can cut a path straight to the boss, or go out of your way to fight all the enemies and collect many drop weapons. Because of this, the chapter can suit just about anyone and at any skill level, since inexperienced players can ignore most of the fighting, and pros can go out of their way to take everyone down. With these factors at the helm, this chapter is just so unique and original that every playthrough can be completely different, and I love the choice between linearity and exploration that this chapter is built around, giving you a real sense of freedom and fun factor not many Fire Emblem chapters have. Revelations was treading dangerous waters by recycling 2 chapters in a row, but thankfully Chapter 10 fixed that up and then some, giving us one of the most original and open-ended chapters in any Fire Emblem game that catered to literally everyone and was such a great time. I may be overselling this chapter, but let's break it down for a minute. What exactly are we doing in Chapter 10? You're going into a large open map, with the choice of a linear pathway or the option of exploring and backtracking to collect new items and discover new areas. That's right everyone, Chapter 10 is a Metroidvania. Okay, so the beginning of Birthright and Conquest wasn't exactly a great way to start the journey, since Chapter 7 of Birthright was okay, and Chapter 7 of Conquest was just meh. Well, Revelations fixed that right up, since Chapter 7 of that game completely shits all over Birthright and Conquest, because as the saying goes, third time's the charm. Way to hit the ground running, Revelations. I mean, the very first chapter of this pathway was my second favourite chapter in the game. Now that is how you start a video game. Yes, coming in at number 2 we have Chapter 7, Unspeakable World, a chapter that was such a good way to start Revelations, as it was a unique, fun, challenging and just awesome chapter. So awesome that this chapter itself is said to be unspeakable. But I don't see the harm in it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen if I talk about it? Okay, that's not funny! In Chapter 7, Corrin and Azora are all alone along with either Felicia or Sebastian. Sir, my name is Jacob. Do you want me to assert my authority again? That's exactly what I thought. Anyway, they all make their way to the bottomless canyon, where Azora plans to explain everything in a nearby cave. However, they are spotted by the army and must make their way out. Now, the objective of this map is to make your way through the maze and seize the map. However, the main handicap present here is that this is a fog of war map. Oh no, 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 no! Yes, I know, Fog of War sucks, and most Fire Emblem maps that have this suck, but fear not my fellow mercenaries, for this is the first map in any Fire Emblem game I've played that has done Fog of War right. Now how the Fog of War works in this map is that the further you go into the fog, the more of the map becomes visible, just like always. However, unlike the previous games, enemies will not move through the fog until they appear visible on the screen, so you don't have to worry about getting caught off guard out of the blue. I really like how this was handled since it makes the challenge factor much more balanced rather than being blindsided by a random enemy, which makes the map a lot more fun and less luck based. Also, because of the maze-like design of the map, there are many areas you can explore in order to find new enemies and collect treasure. Plus, because this map is very boxed in, you don't have to worry about being dogpiled by enemies once you discover different sections of the map. I've said it many times, but I just adore level design that rewards top-notch players and doesn't punish newbies too harshly. Leave it to Revelations to pick up where Conquest and Birthright fell flat, since Chapter 7 of Revelations completely shits on the other 2 Chapter 7s, since this chapter finally did Fog of War right, while at the same time offering up its own unique level design in order to deliver a fantastic chapter to start the journey and make you look forward to an adventure yet to come. And now, on to the number 1 entry. So we've reached the number 1 spot, and now it's time to reveal what my favourite chapter in Fire Emblem Fates Revelations is, and to me this chapter just did everything right. It was fun, it was challenging, it was unique, you got one of the best characters in the game, it catered to various playstyles. Damn it, it was just such a good time. It was just a sea of brilliance, or in this case, a frozen sea. Okay, I apologise for that pun, it was pretty bad. But can you blame me? I mean, the pun was just begging to be used, so the choice wasn't exactly a branch of fate.
Silence!
Okay, sheesh, Xander. Sorry you're not a fan of bad puns. Getting back on track, my favourite chapter in Fire Emblem Fates was indeed Chapter 12, The Frozen Sea, which, like I said before, ticked all the boxes when it came to being a great Fire Emblem chapter, and while not the best in every category, it excelled so well in each one that it came out on top overall. In Chapter 12, Corrin and the gang are making their way to Nestra, when suddenly the sea around them is frozen over and they are attacked by both Flora and Camilla. I get the feeling she wasn't too happy about me marrying Azura in Revelations. I must say it's a good thing she doesn't know about what went down in Awakening. The objective of this chapter is to rout the enemy, but that's easier said than done considering the boats are stuck in ice and you can't move. Well see, that's where the Dragon Veins come in, since they are used to create makeshift bridges that can allow you to cross over to the other boats and defeat the enemies. This chapter is all about unit placement and adaptability, since your units start out separated and you must be able to deal with all the enemies that attack the various boats, as well as being prepared to deal with the respawning units and the large amount of enemy variety in this map. Once the Dragon Veins appear, the map gives you a lot more freedom with how to progress, allowing you to play it your way but constantly keeping you on your toes with the respawning, mobile and stationary enemies, making this a chapter pretty much everyone can get down with, and I feel the Dragon Veins were very cleverly used in this chapter. On top of that, this chapter is very challenging due to the vast number of enemies and their levels, so be sure to use the right units at the right time and never depend on a single unit. In the end, Chapter 12 was such a great chapter that really knew how to tick all the boxes, as it was original, fun, challenging, catered to various playstyles and was just so unique with its progression and the use of Dragon Veins to help it stand out and make it a one-of-a-kind Fire Emblem chapter, which is why it takes the #1 spot as my favourite chapter in Fire Emblem Fates Revelations. This has been CRASHX500. I wish you all a great night, take care, and at this point I feel Fire Emblem Fates Revelations has the overall best level design in the Fire Emblem series as a whole, but I'm not 100% sure about that right now. Well, now that characters and chapters are done for all three pathways, it's time for a change of pace. And speaking of change, Fire Emblem Fates made many changes to the traditional Fire Emblem formula, some good and some bad. What do I think were the best and worst changes, you ask? Well, till next time. Hey everyone, thank you for watching today's video. Be sure to click that like button, and if you'd like to know when more of my videos are coming out, be sure to hit that subscribe button to subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter at CRASHX500. For alternate video recommendations, I first forward you to the best Conquest chapters where I look at my favourite chapters from Conquest, top 5 best and worst Birthright chapters where I look at my best and worst chapters from Birthright, and finally for something similar, I point you to the top 15 worst Fire Emblem chapters where I talk about my least favourite chapters in the Fire Emblem series as a whole. Hopefully one of those videos will be to your liking. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.